Anantapuram, related to Kannur district. So happy to be here for today, and it has given a lot of information of ABCD. So, and the lecture today is very near to our easy to understand and very. Thank you, sir, for giving us enlightening on this. So my question is a little maybe how far is. So the Green Revolution.
Yes.
Prior to that, actually, it seems to there was food security was there. So the Green Revolution, which gave the lot of support for productivity of the many crops.
Yes.
It has it took a lot of part in the minds of even the farmers and even the policymakers and globally every part of the associated sectors. So today we are discussing about the zero budget natural farming, which is found to be very effective to go back to the previous days. But still, many of the farmers who are doing farming now and the policymakers, they are not able to come out of that box. Still they are having the perception of Green Revolution is only the impact of chemical farming as whatever we can say. The impacts of Green Revolution is still not leaving us.
Yes.
Say that in a positive way or negative way. Does it have done more positive or does it lead them to negative? The one which I would like to know from your side. The second one, we are trying our best, the zero budget natural farming from the state of Andhra Pradesh. So to take more effectively in a holistic approach. You said already this kind of approach, this what you said for tree forestation like this. So is there any other better methods to take to the more effectively in a quicker manner also? Like how the Green Revolution has taken,
right.
Yes.
Look, yes, I'll ask the questions, but come back with more details if there's more I can give you. Certainly the Green Revolution was critical, right? In the 1960s, we had about 3.5 billion people on the planet, and we were facing nearly 1 billion people going hungry. And so we had to internationally, globally, say how do we grow more food? And of course that was the logical and right response. How do we actually use science to go forward? But the point is always in science, yes, we have to progress, but we also have to observe and learn and keep on improving and refining. And in a sense, over the last 50 years of the Green Revolution, we've learnt a lot. And so we've learnt, basically, whether it's ABC or what I had up before, that yes, this has consequences. This has done damage to our soils, and this has done damage to the nutritional integrity of the food. And so really, it's everything. It's like learning and seeing these truths, and then saying, okay, what is it that we can do? What must we do to now keep on refining and keep on improving? So in no way do we say to the Green Revolution, this is bad. We simply say, no, we have to keep on innovating, as you did in the Green Revolution. We have to keep on looking at the bad, negative consequences and how do we avoid and overcome those.
Yeah, see, when we look at the nature,
yes,
so the emission of green gases,
yes.
Carbon dioxide, the levels of carbon dioxide in the nature.
Yeah.
See, as our advisors have said, this has gone out of our, they have moved away very far levels.
Yes.
So now we are talking about the wildlife also. So knowing the Green Revolution effects now, either to the soil or the human beings or even for the many other places. Now farmers are okay, they will be following the policy making or the neighboring farmers approaches actually. So though that time, as you say, the Green Revolution was very good enough, and it has given some positive to some extent now. But in the recent times, maybe 2 decades or up 2.5 decades, it is giving other sides.
Yes.
Soils are getting actually emission of the greenhouse gas and other things. See, the effects are increasing now.
Yeah.
So,
but see, and talk about exactly that's the same story. We've been fixed again for about 50 years on CO2. Now, CO2 is a symptom of this oxidation of the landscape and now oxidation of fossil fuels. But it is a symptom. It's gone up because we are oxidizing more. And what we've done is we've sort of interpreted the symptom and said because the symptom is going up, that is the cause. And that's a very dangerous and fallacious thing. It's a bit like if I am bleeding and then you say, hey, I have blood on the floor, I have to clean up the blood on the floor. No, I have to stop the wound.
Yes.
Not clean up the blood on the floor. And we're focused on cleaning up the blood on the floor. How do we reduce the symptom?
Yes.
And the real issue with climate change, in fact, and this is again fact, science, but it's not what the policymakers are talking about, is in fact 95% of the heat dynamics of Earth is driven by hydrology, water. 4% is driven by the CO2 component of the greenhouse effect. So we've been focused on 4% and we've been ignoring 95%. See, it's almost, the elephants are too big to be in the room to see how significant they are.
Yes.
You see? And really what we're saying, no, if we manage the hydrology, see, if we manage the hydrology of rainfall, we can safely, naturally cool the planet. And then CO2 doesn't become, the symptom doesn't become the problem. And in a sense, by building the sponge, we are taking carbon from the air to build the sponge. So we will reduce the symptom anyway. But it's not reducing the symptom, it's building the sponge to have the water.
Yes.
That's significant. This is wrong. We are just simply saying here is a innovative new option. It's an option. We are building lifeboats as new options.
Yes.
We are not forcing people into the lifeboats.
Yeah.
We don't have enough lifeboats for everybody anyway. Okay, so we are simply saying, let us look at these options, let us perfect these options, let us demonstrate these options, document, let's give you blueprints for the options, but it is your democratic decision. Do you want to take that option, or are you comfortable with staying where you are?
Thank you.
Okay, and so it's a democracy. And India is very important because it is now Andhra Pradesh that has a decision. Yes, we are drying. Yes, we have 75% red. Yes, we can have 100% green, naturally, profitably, beneficially, socially. Why do not? Is this what people want to do?
Yeah.
And here is the zero budget natural farming option. And then let's look at that, let's see if we want to extend it. And I suppose Dee and I and Sophie, we're sort of saying, okay, well, can we document that? And then can we explain some of the science behind it? And we will be going to Delhi later on, and like here, we will say, yes, please, any questions? We can try our very best to help answer. But it is you that are the government, you make the decisions.
Finally, it is to be options who will choose the best out of it.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
No, pleasure.
Walter, just like Vijay sir, I am also following from last 1 year your videos and these lectures, everything. But my question is related to this one.
Yes.
So, at the field level, many farmers and there are other alternative movements that are saying about establishing the stable carbon.
Yes.
If you apply farm manure, say with cow dung, everything, with heaps, in aerobic condition that put and just there.
Yes.
So that also fixes the carbon. And there is a lot of differences in the field. Actually, I am working on establishing science.
Yeah.
So when you apply farm manure, we can't see the same results like ZBNF amendments.
Yes.
So I have studied this glomalin, humus, role of humus, glomalin. So farming manure in one way is also leading to burning. So oxidation is happening and greenhouse gases also existing. So I want the clarity from you.
Yes.
So in terms of farmers, they are confused many times.
Yeah. No, look, this is again, thank you, very important question. And of course we made the point, we're growing, we all agree we've got to grow biomass, photosynthesis, and then the question is how much of that burns and how much of it can get into stable soil carbon. And in a sense we didn't get the chance to talk about, because there's always more to talk about, well, what are the practices, what are the practical practices to get more into this fungal thing. And the first thing to do, and in a sense, is stop doing oxidative, not silly, but counterproductive things. So if we don't do as much of all of these things, then already we're lowering that, oxidation. Okay? And then we pick up on DD's soil health principles as guidelines. Keep green plant covers there all the time. Keep the soil cool, integrate grazing, provide shelter, all those soil health principles. But they too are general guidelines. Okay, and we can write those up. But what we don't do, and it would be wrong to say, this is what you must do. These are prescriptions. Because what we have to do, we have to come and visit you and talk, look at your soil.
Carbon, but it is separate.
Yes, labile carbon. Yes.
So I feel maybe this adding this Jehne whatever genome, current genome.
Yeah.
We see a lot of earthworms coming back.
Yes.
But when you apply farming, here and there we can see one or two, but the earthworms are coming from the side. I don't understand why it is happening.
Okay. So this is the whole dynamics now of this fungal or microbial ecology in the soil, right? And nobody understands it precisely because it's, there's 10 times the biomass underground, the life in the soil, the bacteria, fungi, 10 times the biomass than above the ground. So there's a vast community, very active. What we're doing is we're feeding it cellulose and lignin and exudates from the plant. And these fungi are basically converting that and polymerizing that, just changing it biochemically to humus. The glomalin is actually these 25,000 kilometers of fungal hyphae. And so as they grow through the soil, the fungi keep on growing further, leaving behind the dead cell walls. They're made out of chitin, glucosamine, and it's that chitin glucosamine that's left behind that makes glomalin. So these are, in a sense, biochemical products from the cellulose lignin exudates. And then it depends on how active these fungi are. And this is where the biostimulants come in. And see, zero budget natural farming and your inoculum or your seed dressings are all about stimulating these natural fungi to do more of this. Okay? Yes. But again, we can measure the activities of these, we can do a lot, but I would have to look at your soil and then you say, yes, this process is working at 90% optimum or 10% optimum. This process is working similarly, is at 5% or 80%. The herbivores, they're eating litter or dry matter, foliage, and then they're basically putting it back, and is this working optimally or not? So we would have to look at each of those, and it would be then, from experience, what is the way to optimize this process? But
this pardon me, but farmers are also asking this question.
Yes, and we do.
What is the difference between farming and this maintenance? So which is better to apply? Which is
Okay, and look, we have that all the time. And you say, look, here's cow manure. Somebody says it's worm juice. Otherwise say it's jungle juice. And Bayer, who bought out Monsanto for $220 billion, will sell you a bottle of jungle juice. And their jungle juice is supposed to be even better than your cow dung. The only thing is a bottle of jungle juice might cost you $500.
yes. People will come and then say,
yeah, but so you just have to believe in yourself. And you have to believe in the processes, because no, I can't vouch for the bottle of jungle juice at $500. Okay, and a different process. I mean, yeah, it's all working in this biostimulating these fungi. But again, I would have to look at your site specifically.
And also we need to understand this volatile carbon, stable carbon.
Yes. There's no question that you're getting carbon, there's a cellulose lignin, and then you have a lot of it, cellulose particularly on the surface, that would be broken down saprophytically as labile carbon, just going back to CO2. So a lot of zero-till people in America, Australia, zero-till, they basically say, oh look, we've been zero-tilling, we've been putting this mulch on the surface, and 20 years later, our soil carbon hasn't improved. Absolutely, because 95% of that litter has saprophytically oxidized to CO2, because it hasn't gone down into this process. The other thing I just say in this, look, it is not clinically dogmatic in the sense that there's a ratio, and whether you're getting 60% or 40% or 80% into here, it's not, you must do this, you must do that. You don't, all you're trying to do is, I've got to avoid 100% going up there, or as in industrial agriculture, I've got 150% going up, because I'm oxidizing all of A as well as heritage, legacy carbon from the soil, right? So it's not, nobody's crucifying or penalising things, as long as a significant part of A ends up in C, then you get the dividends. There's another important question. People say, look, well, does it keep on going forever? And the answer is no. Once you get your soil up to 8-10% carbon, then basically the extra benefits, I mean, once you have a healthy sponge, then more carbon helps a little bit, but it doesn't really, it's not a linear response. It gets to a plateau, but of course the answer is there's always more degraded land to regenerate, so don't give up, do you?
I'll work backwards. So from that point, that you may reach a maximum amount of carbon, but you aren't, unless you have a real bedrock underneath, and we've seen that trees can go through that, you can go down. So there's always more soil, not just more degraded soil, but there's always more depth. And once you have a healthy sponge on the top, the roots can get down to the next layer and keep building. The other thing is, I think there's a lot of people think about soil carbon as if it's an element on the periodic table. It's a very simple scientific thing. But soil carbon is life. It's the living and the dead, the very dead, right? So it's all of the life in the soil, the microbes, the roots, the earthworms, and all of the things that they exude from their body, and the plant roots and the exudates and the fungi. And then it's what they leave behind. And over time, if you do that long enough, you get petroleum or coal, right? So the living, the dead, and the very dead. And we need to think about soil carbon a little bit differently. People want to quantify it because they think there's money to be made, just like there is from other carbon, long-term carbon. But the real economy is a local economy. And so this here. We have a lot of different examples here. I don't know if the economists in the room know the idea of a local multiplier. That if I give you $1 and he gives you $1 and you give it back to me, and we keep going, suddenly that $1, I've made $100, right? It's 100 rupees. So it's the same thing that the important thing is that life, more and more life is growing and eating each other and building more and more life. So it's okay if it's respiring, like I said before. But the important point is not how stable it is, but is it moving? Because petroleum is very stable, but it doesn't actually create life, right? So we need to change the question a little bit about soil carbon.
But fortunately or unfortunately, our Indian government treats like that.
Yes, so part of what we need to do, we need to think of some very simple ways to explain the benefit to the policymakers. Very clear ways that they can see how they can save money, how they can make money from healthy living ecosystem, and not just to sell one part of it, right? Not just to sell the soil carbon.
Yeah. And this has actually been a very important thing that Dee and I have been doing, because, see, the value isn't in carbon per se. I have blocks of carbon and I'm getting carbon credits for these blocks. The value is when that carbon is in the sponge, and then that sponge is giving you these positive multiplier dividends. So it's only when the carbon, and this is the big message for the UN in terms of the climate debate, it's not just drawing down carbon, but it's putting that carbon in the sponge, because it's only then, through hydrology. Pleasure.
Just to get back to your very original question, those principles, right? Don't disturb the soil, use diverse plants, keep it green. Those are principles, but for each principle there's 100 ways we already know to do that, and thousands more that we could figure out. And so we need to know, what is your aim, what do you want to grow, who is involved in the decision, do you want to have animals or not, are you, how much water do you have access to begin with, all of those things, and it's going to be very, very individual, and as soon as you think you've figured it out, nature is going to adapt, and you'll have to think about it again.
Yeah,
right? So.
Because they do that.
Always when I go to the field, see the soil, and it's amazing to see the earthworms coming there in the soil.
Yeah.
That's the pretty kind of soil. And more, maybe I need to test how many actions everything go there. So how many are there? That's not important anywhere in the
literature.
Well, I think one way that we can help to make those decisions is to see what weeds are growing there, because what will grow, what can grow will grow. So we're seeing, certain things that are growing that are not agriculture, and we say, okay, what is like that, but that we can eat, right? Or can we find an animal from the desert we can bring to graze those and start building that system? But when the soil improves, that plant won't grow anymore. Something else will. So next year it's going to have to be a new plant. And that's a change in thinking, is to be constantly adapting along with the ecosystem, not fighting against it. Yeah.
Are there any advancements, like how fast we can answer that question of food security through this regenerative farming? So otherwise it can be adaptable. Policy makers are much worried about the food security through this kind of information. So how can we answer that? How fast we can answer that?
Well, I think you have the best examples in India here, is that you look at each farm and you say, what is the change in production, or the decrease in irrigation, or the improvement. In some cases you're going to start seeing some improvement in the available water, the surface water tables. So it's not just food security, it's water security too. But those answers are in your, I mean, the answers are here in this room.
In respect of the farmer, see, mostly farmer says that, so I am interested in farming, natural farming. So in his perspective, he wants the sustainable income and the other aspects of soil. He says that, okay, I want to be soil care, but how I have to for living of my family and my systems? How can I go for sustainable farming? Number one. Number two, as Sarath said, the country will say, how can we practice the natural farming? There is apprehension that the slow rate of increase in yields, or can it sustain the food security for the coming generations? This is another important question globally also. See the rate at which we have to move faster. Because some kind of alerts are made very widely and get widely publicized. Suppose if we get a system like that, so if we don't practice this, the whole of the generation is going to get quickly some problem. See, most of them will get alert, even not only the people, even the policy makers and other systems also, like the way. Here the national farming. So we know very clearly, in perspective of the farmers, in perspective of the policy makers, and other ways also coming. So it's a good one. Everybody knows. So when we go and talk to the farmers, they said, I know sir, I know very practical about natural farming, it's very good for me. And I'm sure that I will get sustainable income. Okay, it is taking what I mean to say, a slow rate. Slow rate. That is one point. And similarly, they are very much worried about they are not worried about the other effects. The soil, we talk about many things about soil carbon, soil supplementation. They may not be knowing actually. Even ecological also, the nature and other things. So as we are well aware of the other effects also. We'll be thinking more in perspective of the farmer and other policymakers also. Sometimes how does can we make effectively very quickly also. That is, we'll quickly get to the questions in the fields that what we are representing them.
1 second.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, next 1 or 2 questions. Those who have pressing questions, please raise your hands. Yes. 1, 2, 3. 3 questions.
We're very quick. It may be slow, but it's the fastest one we know. Okay.
So look, BJ sort of said, look, if we're now running 25% green, and if we can increase that to 50, 75% green, that's a 200% food. The other one, as we talked about here, in terms of nutrient, no, we might have taken away the nutrient cycling, the nutrient cycling, because we're going to have 80% of humanity in cities, urban areas, and basically here is all the food, here's all the nutrients, and we can cycle these, but this whole urban agriculture, efficient urban agriculture based on nutrient waste cycles will be a big part of 21st century food security. But look, that's enough. Next question, and there's a lady too over there.
Namaste, sir. I was amazed to listen to your lecture. I felt very happy. It's very close to my subject, which is trained us. I myself, Jagdish City, a farmer, a nature farmer. A lot of confusion is happening in farmers' mind that black soil is good, red soil is good. A lot of things are happening. In my journey, I understood that all soil are unique. The mother of this ocean of nutrients are unique. Right. If you keep soil healthy, soil enriches microorganisms, earthworms, and all kinds of people. As you told previously about these things. And according to you, you believe in that red soil is good, black soil is good, that soil is good. Any differences with that? According to you, I want to know about.
Look, absolutely. Very simply, we are living in reality. And there's no good soil, no bad soil, there is just reality. It could be degraded, but that's the thing. That's what we've created, so let us take the opportunity. So we take every situation, no matter how poor or how dry, and we say, look, what is the potential? What is limiting the regeneration potential in this situation? We have plenty as nature, sunshine, CO2, nitrogen, water, the air. What's limiting is soil, water, nutrients. Okay, how do we overcome? And so there's no simple answer except Yes, every soil has potential to regenerate. Nature took rock and made rainforest. Yes, if we can look at those limitations, address those limitations, we too can regenerate. And I think it's seeing that positive thing. It's not red soil, black soil, white soil, desert soil. What's limiting productivity? What can we do practically to accelerate? Indeed, he talked about it from weeds. You see, these are really pioneer, colonizing plants, right? That actually help pioneer life into that soil. By simply growing there, they're building sponge and soil. But by growing there, they exclude the habitat for themselves. They improve the soil and make room for new other colonizers. So there's a lot of natural systems, fungi, weeds, etc., that we can use to accelerate soil regeneration. And in a concentrated way, within 5 years, we can take any degraded subsoil back to productive, healthy soil.
Thanks.
The lady, yeah.
So, the role of the anaerobic microbes in
Yes.
preparing the sponge kind of thing or something. Like, because in ZBNF, the main role is like the preparation of Jivamrutam,
Yes.
that is the liquid organic formulation, is the major thing. Like, we feel it was the major thing. So me and Dharmendra sir was just discussing about it, we were just debating about the things that it contains aerobic and
Yes.
I debate that it contains aerobic and he does that it contains anaerobic microorganisms. So what do you think is the role of that anaerobic microorganisms in this?
Yeah. Look, thank you so much, and you're actually, really quite deep. There's microbes, right? But there's different classes of microbes with different functions. And of course, these anaerobic microbes, they come from 3.8 billion years ago. And they were fundamental in a lot of processes. But by having, for example, inside the rumen, it's all anaerobic. And of course, there's a whole lot of chemical reactions, including nitrogen fixation. And it's in these anaerobic conditions that you're turning then nitrogen gas and biomass into urea and ammonia and adding all that nitrogen fertilizer. When you have anaerobic microsites in soil, aggregated anaerobic microsites in soil, then you have actually rhizosphere nitrogen fixing organism, Azotobacter, Azospirillum, blue-green algae, and they can fix 40 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per annum from the air in these anaerobic. So that gives you effectively the optimum nitrogen ecology for growing anything from these anaerobic microsites. It's even more clever, more sophisticated than that. You get something like sugar cane, right? And good ecological sugar cane can do 170 tons, 200 tons of biomass per hectare per annum. And you say, how can this plant do 200 tons of biomass when there's no legume to be seen? Just as a grass. Bamboo does the same thing. And of course it's feeding these anaerobic symbionts, fixing nitrogen. But to do that, it has to, and this comes back to the carbon question, what it has to do, it has to create anaerobic aggregate microsites. And it does that by such high fungal activities. These guys need oxygen to function, but by functioning, they drop the oxygen level in those aggregates down to below 10%. So then you create the anaerobic microsite that starts fixing the nitrogen. You see, and so these guys are creating their own mixed soil microhabitat where you get a very sophisticated synergy between, the nitrogen fixing, the carbon fixing, and the whole aggregation and structure of soil. But so yes, very good question, but it's another level of sophistication of soil microecology that really the future is going to be all about, understanding and applying. Thank you. In the B.
Yeah, in the B. What's happening, how does it work, etc.
Okay, look, it's okay, no, very good. It's just simply the opposite from photosynthesis, right? Remember we had this sort of situation, we can take time and action away from here, we don't need time and action. Okay, remember we had sort of CO2 plus water gives you carbohydrates, C6H12O6 plus 6O2. Okay, and so that's really photosynthesis. There's 6 of each of these, and that's sun. And that's in a sense photosynthesis, and oxidation is really the reverse reaction, as Jehne pointed out, and it can happen by burning or it can happen by breathing. Respiration, right? You and I, when we breathe out about 1,000 parts per million CO2 out of our lungs because we've been breathing, we've been oxidizing just by living. We don't want to stop living. Okay, and so that's just the reverse reaction. And so oxidation is simply a matter of taking oxygen from the environment, breaking that down, and it will then generate CO2, which is of course what we measure. But as we said, it will also generate water. So that was one of these ways that we're going to actually grow 120 drops. Because by simply respiring, oxidizing, we are creating water in that soil. Marvelous, because this is just stored solar energy, it's stored carbon, and it's stored water. It's like a bank account. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're just regulating, and this is a beautiful dynamic. Here's plants fixing carbon, here's biology oxidizing some of it, that's the BC ratio, and it's that sweet spot balance which regulates. And the lady asking the question before, you see basically if we have enough of this oxidation, then we starve the oxygen from that soil, and we create anaerobic microcytes, which then allows nitrogen from the gas to form NH4 plus and amino acids, and then these become premium nitrogen sources for plant growth. So it's just simply by depriving those aggregate microcytes of oxygen, we create the conditions for nitrogen fixation by Azotobacter, Azospirillum, etc. Again, a whole bunch of microbial ecology. So it's really elegant, simple, extremely effective, and really beautiful. Does that help answer it? Yeah. No, please.
Actually, I have read one research finding today. The weeds are beneficial to the
Okay.
So when we talk about covering the entire bare lands, I mean I am having a feeling that every crop is important. There is no weeding, there is none.
No.
So every root is important for us.
Every plant, every root, every bug.
So in that case, when we are promoting this covering the cover crops, so is there any choice we can make so that we can use better combination and better carbon fixation?
Yeah, look, and yes, and the answer is yes, but you have the answers to that because that is local experience on the ground. So here in Andhra Pradesh, we would talk to the leading innovative farmers, the wackos, the people who've done clever things, and they would have the answers, and all you have to do is talk, openly, constructively, and then you say, these are the pioneer plants. So if we go to degraded granite, plagioclase subsoils, these red clay subsoils, concrete, and then we say, what are the pioneer colonizers? But we just have to look outside the car window, because there you see all the scrubby, thorny legume bushes. Hey, that's what's colonizing. And they're the same genus that is in the Atacama Desert.
Yeah.
You see? And so that's telling you something, isn't it? And so, yes, there is no such thing as a weed. A weed is simply a plant that some agronomist has put on a list to sell herbicides.
Simple question. What is the role of cattle in
Cattle.
farming?
Okay, well look, okay, so this is this box here, and what is the role of not cattle, well cattle, but herbivores generally speaking. And look, herbivores are actually critically important because they are taking what would otherwise be fire fuels, okay, and they are turning those into biofertilizer, which is your nitrogen, and humus. So here nature has invented this mobile compost heap, bioreactor, with legs, and an intake end and a business end behind the tail, under the tail, and they're taking fuel which would otherwise burn. And so in Australia, California, Portugal, everywhere now we're going to have wildfires.
But
And
necessarily, the number of cattle increases, the emission of methane increases.
yeah, that's yes, okay, no, that's true. There's more methane going up, but okay, well, it's another story. But there's also chemical and biochemical processes that digest the methane. So quite frankly, it's a myth. It's called a methane myth because methane for the last 10, 20 million years has been at 700 parts per billion in the atmosphere. We've had more herbivores releasing methane, but yet the atmosphere's had 700 parts per billion. Why? Because there are natural processes that oxidize that methane and remove it. And they still apply, but it's a simple case of somebody saying, yes, cows emit methane, therefore they are bad, but they're only looking part of the system. They ignore the processes that remove methane naturally, and those processes are cultivated by the cows themselves, growing making green pastures. But that's a bigger story, bigger science we can go through.
Yes.
Of meat. Yeah, well look, okay, basically, as I said, we've got fuel reduction, we've got biofertilizer, and we've got edible protein, milk or meat, and we've got healthy human on nutrition of meat. So there's nothing, it's all positive, but obviously too much of anything is not good. Because if you have too many cattle and not enough grass, then they will degrade. And of course, if you just eat meat, you're not necessarily going to be healthy as well. But it's all balanced. But so we can always take, and science is very bad now, where it takes one factor and puts it into extremes and says, hey, that's bad, but it forgets about natural balances.
With the last question from water to water, it was this Q&A.
Okay.
We have some more things to do before we close.
So I'd like to go back to Dr. Bracknell's if I have been surprised that not all population grew that sparse with Ravajah income. And I'm sure that this many of women have had these results. No? I think your answer should have been, we don't know it.
Okay, this was the...
Maybe Dr. Bracknell, you will know it in the future, no?
Yeah.
As long as we know it works, it's a powerful tool, but we don't know how it works.
The earth will increase and earth will...
The increase of population from them applying the
Okay, yeah, well look, I mean... yeah.
You were saying if you're just spraying, it's nothing, no? It's not like spreading manure or whatever, no? But the earth population is increasing very fast. I have been really surprised how fast. No?
Yeah.
I think the answer should be we don't know.
Yeah, look, yes.
We know it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
We don't know how it works.
No, look, I mean, absolutely. No, I haven't been involved with the earthworm discussion, but the point is, look, everything in nature relies on substrate. Has it got food? Has it got the eggs or, the progenitor, the reproductive capacity, and has it got the right environment? And the minute we create the right food, the right reproductive, use, source material and the right environment, we can get a population explosion, and then are there balancing predators or other things? And so that governs every population. So yeah, we can get earthworm explosion, we can get locust explosions, but it's those four factors, and we can control the ecology of all of that. The only thing we don't control is our own population, because that becomes politics.